the only reason I got hired over this other way better artist was my Photoshop file was so organized.
Oh, interesting.
That was the thing that got me the job, not necessarily my skill. I
I
had
mean, there
enough
is something to
skill.
be
It's a
said.
combination.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it was. But yeah, and it was. I like to think it was because I ate the chicken feet. But
All right. Well, welcome everyone to another Aether Hour. This time we are joined by one more person. We've got Gary, our art director, with us. But as per usual, I'm Nick. We've got Cody, we have Josh, and we've got Gina. So we've got a big crew today, and we thought it would be fun to actually talk about how we got into the industry because everyone at this company has kind of come in with differing levels of experience. We did have Dwayne a couple weeks ago, who's kind of like our veteran developer. He came from Blizzard and lots of other cool stuff. But yeah, we have some cool members on the team with some cool experience. So I don't know,
Hard
Cody.
to match Dwayne's background.
I know. But I thought it'd be interesting if we just kind of go around the room maybe and just talk a little bit about our history with game dev and kind of how we got to here. And I know, Cody, you've worked on some cool stuff. You wanna tell us a bit about your past?
Yeah, for sure. So funnily enough, I actually had originally intended to get into the film industry. In high school, I got really into film editing, and after I had broken my leg for the second time and couldn't do sports anymore, I kind of embraced the de facto high school AV kid who went around and filmed all the other sports events that you couldn't play in anymore. And then I ran a film festival here in Alberta. It was like the first Alberta wide high school film fest, which was really, really cool to like get into like the behind the scenes of everything and how like a production at that scale works. So I went to Vancouver Film School for 2 years. I did one course in graphic design to like intro myself to the school and just like up my graphic design skills because those are kind of universally handy everywhere. And then from there, I was going to go into film. And then when I discovered the course that I wanted to do didn't focus a lot on editing, it was a lot more like shooting, directing, being a DP, lighting, that kind of stuff I wasn't as interested in. I decided that, oh, hey, I like making video games. My roommates are all going into making video games. I should go make video games.
Nice.
So I did their game design course. And the day I graduated was the day in 2008 when there were a lot of layoffs and some other bad things happening in Vancouver. Like EA had laid off like 1,500 people and closed the Need for Speed studio. And
The ebb and flow of the industry.
Exactly. The 2008 recession or crash hit the industry hard the day I graduated, which was super cool.
Yep.
So I came back home to Edmonton, and actually, funnily enough, I got a job interview at BioWare fairly quick after after I got back. But I was so tired and exhausted from school, I actually bombed that interview super hard.
Oh no.
Remember one of the questions they asked was like, what game are you playing right now? I'm like, I don't know. I'm really tired. Left 4 Dead. And then they started asking me a bunch of technical questions about Left 4 Dead because I was interviewing for like a tech designer role. And I was like, I don't know, guns shoot. Just completely bombed it. And then about 6 months later, I had applied again, this time for a QA position, and got in because I had a website. And they're like, oh, he must know how to code. That's super helpful. So we'll hire him on board because he knows how to code because he has a website.
Okay.
So I was there for Dragon Age Origins.
So wait. Did you know how to code, or were you using like a free website builder?
I did, yeah. This is well before the time of free website builder. So my website was in Flash.
Okay.
In ActionScript 3. And then I had actually, for my school project, I had become the programmer because in my group, I was the only one who kind of understood how to code. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to do like cinematics design and stuff like that, but there just wasn't a need for it on our project. So I had to kind of learn how to code in Unreal Script and C++ without any sort of real background.
Jeez.
Beyond ActionScript. So yeah, I joined the QA team at BioWare on Dragon Age 1 or Origins, and then eventually onto the DLC and the expansion pack. As a design analyst, I kind of started in the tech world. So doing tools testing and stuff of that ilk, but quickly found that I was much more comfortable doing design. So like writing, game design, combat balancing, all that kind of fun stuff. testing at the studio. So I kind of moved into that role for Dragon Age 2. And then I was kind of on the team that did all of the stuff for. Yep.
What was the transition like? Like, what kind of things did you need to prove to them or show to them that you can move up from QA? Because I feel like a lot of times in indie dev or in dev in general, you hear all of these stories of like, I started in QA and then I moved up to become a director, you know? So I'm always curious, like, how that transition happens.
So when I moved from QA, like QA to QA is a pretty lateral move. For that one, it was a combination of not being afraid to file bugs outside of my lanes. So like I was tech QA, but I was filing bugs for design and for writing, for all these other things that I wasn't directly responsible for. So kind of having the bravery to do that. And then, just kind of getting the right people to see those things and popping in, chiming in on those conversations where appropriate is definitely a big thing, because you don't want to overstep your boundaries.
Sure.
And I think a lot of it really depends on the studio, because some studios are really accommodating for, not necessarily accommodating, but like really understand the importance of QA in the team and the value that they bring. And other studios or individuals might see them just as like the bottom rung on a ladder, the lowest part of the barrel, and kind of just ignore them and just think that they're Joe Schmoes or whatever. That
They're the ones that complain about the game everybody works hard on.
I often joke that QA's job is to be is like to tell people that they're bad at their job professionally. It's not like you're helping them get better at it, but that's the thing I like to joke about, because that's the type of personality I am. So yeah, like the QA to QA lateral was more of a lateral movement, and that was fairly easy. When I transitioned from after I had left BioWare and I was at doing some more general tech stuff in the serious games industry, which is like industrial training, every construction simulators, stuff like that, getting into like VR and stuff. When I went over to the next proper game studio I worked at, which was Beamdog, I transitioned from QA to production at that point. And what had kind of happened to me was, being the sole QA member at that studio that I was at, I was responsible for Jira and a lot of our database tracking and bug management and task management and workflows and all that kind of stuff. And I had actually learned by kind of osmosis, or just being the one who had to deal with it, a lot of production processes at the same time. And I had remembered a lot of the stuff that we had done at BioWare on Dragon Age 1 and 2 and what eventually became Inquisition before I left the studio. And kind of applied that to my working knowledge of production. And then kind of when I moved to Beamdog, I was able to kind of sell that idea. Like, I had all this experience doing the technical side of the equation. I hadn't done the personal side of the equation quite as much as I had done the technical side. And they were willing to take the risk on me that, because I at least had the technical side of it down, like the task management, estimations, Jira, bug management, workflows, process, all that kind of stuff down, that they could train me and teach me and coach me into that more leadership side that eventually comes with the role of production. So I'm greatly appreciative to them for taking that chance on me. And then, I joined Beamdog. And it was like 3 months after I joined, not even, maybe 2. My lead, who is the creative director of Axis and Allies Online when I joined, which was the project I was on, left the studio to go pursue making his own D&D modules and stuff like that. When he left, I kind of de facto also took over his role, in addition to being like a junior producer and a regular producer and like all that kind of stuff. So I very much got like what often happens in game dev, especially when you're in like the middle of a project or you're nearing the end, is as people transition out, whether they leave or something else happens, oftentimes you'll kind of inherit those responsibilities.
The gap has to be filled.
Exactly. The hat has to be filled. There must always be a hat wearer. So I inherited that hat and I kind of ran with it for 3 years, which was a very kind of expedited course up to kind of that senior level producer role because of that. And that's kind of experience I carried forward with me for the rest of my career, going from Beamdog to Eastside Games, working on some mobile cannabis themed games, which was a blast. And I got to meet a lot of really, really cool people. Then eventually to Archaeact, which is a VR studio based out of Vancouver that I was the senior narrative producer and lead on. working on Journey to Foundation, which was a VR Mass Effect style game in VR based on the Foundation IP, which is Isaac Asimov's whole jam. For those who are unfamiliar, think of the fall of Rome, but 12,000 years in the future, using math to predict what's going to happen to an exact T. If you've ever seen the Will Smith movie I, Robot, it's actually in the same universe as that, just far, far removed. There's an Apple TV show as well too, though it's kind of deviated a decent amount from the books in a way that I actually quite enjoy. But yeah, the experience that I had at ArcAct was really, really positive. I got really into VO, voice direction, and casting and all that kind of stuff, and working with our VO partners a lot on that, and managing characters and narrative pacing and design and stuff like that. So when I joined Seismic Squirrel, we were kind of already really, really far along in the development of Aether and Iron, so I wasn't able to have a tremendously large impact on that aspect of development. But I am looking forward to, the things that are going to come down the pipeline next, being able to get more involved on the ground level, help rebuild some of the production processes that the studio has so that they're healthier, so that we can hit our goals in a very healthy and manageable way, and just overall have a better quality, have a really, really great quality, game, future things, all that kind of fun stuff moving forward.
Yeah. It's interesting because in a role like yours, it's more it's almost like based on experience and sort of what you can or what you can say you can do. Whereas, coming more from an art background, it's always been, portfolio, and showing kind of what kind of person you are, Yep. But for some of these jobs where it's more like either managerial or, just Jira and tasks and stuff like that, you're kind of just needing to say like, yeah, I can do that thing, and I can do a good job with it.
Yeah, you don't really have an art portfolio to be like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is like, while I was job hunting over the previous year, when you apply for a lot of roles, they'll use the same template. So it's always like, attach a portfolio. And I'm like, what? I'm a producer. Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
I actually made a website.
Here are my Excel spreadsheets.
It's the most boring website in the world. It's got like, here's the games I worked on, and like basically my resume broken down into screenshots, more or less, like one for each game, essentially. And then like testimonials.
Yeah.
Like, here's how good of a person
I mean, with the management, it's all testimonials.
Yeah. So that was an interesting kind of experiment of like, how do you make a production portfolio or a project manager portfolio, but have it be like engaging so that you don't just want to, immediately click away because it's the driest thing in the world. So, that was like a decent experience. That was a decent experience to like kind of, oh, right, this is like how to make a website again. It's been so long because I haven't had to stretch those bones in a while. But
so one question for you guys, myself included, is I've noticed just talking to other developers or people who have gotten into the industry by having a chance. What was it like when the curtain was pulled back from going from a player like perspective to now being able to see the other side of the curtain on how the games are actually made, and kind of the breaking of reality for what your previous expectations were?
Oh man.
I think for me it aligned pretty decently. I had been fortunate that like my high school computer teacher, his nephew was a producer at BioWare, so I actually had the pleasure of going to tour the studio while I was in high school. I think the big thing for me, or like the big takeaway, especially getting into production, and like QA is one thing because like you're calling out bugs and you're really looking at like total bug count, created versus result charts. You're really focusing in on like the overall quality of the product, and you're not necessarily as focused on like how the sausage is made, in terms of like the effort that goes into making the things. Like you have a good understanding of it because you have to know how it's made to be a great, like if the more you know, the better of a QA analyst you can be. But you don't have to have like a super detailed inner knowledge of how everything is done. But getting into production and having to manage the people who are doing all of this work and create their tasks and help them balance their workloads and figure out how long things are going to take or how hard or complex something is going to be, and then turn that into an abstract number for people to use to gauge how much work is left to do on the project.
Yeah.
It is a small miracle that anything gets done at all.
Yeah.
To be honest, like, and I think anyone in game dev will kind of attest to this, is just like the amount of coordination and effort and legitimate small miracles that have to happen on a daily basis to make something of any scale, whether it's something small like a old school 1942 shoot 'em up to Aether and Iron to a Dragon Age. It's very, very it's very it's just incredible that like these things actually get made and they're held together with hope, duct tape, loose string, and the sheer willpower of the people who are trying to make something really, really incredible that will have an impact on someone's life going forward from here to the end of time.
I mean, it gave me a lot of respect, appreciation. Like, I will play games now, have a deeper appreciation for things that were added or decisions that were made for the games, where I'm just like, okay, from a developer standpoint, like, what was the most recent one? Oh, Age of Empires 2 Xbox version. I finally, for the first time ever, watched somebody stream Age of Empires, and they were playing on Xbox, and I'm just like, from a developer standpoint, like, kudos to them. Like, that was a feat to pull off, like making an RTS that is as like micro heavy as Age of Empires, but for an Xbox controller, and make the system actually work. I wouldn't do it. I couldn't imagine playing on Xbox, but from a developer standpoint, like, I definitely have respect for being able to pull something like that off, as well as other games.
Yeah. For me, one of the craziest things getting into game dev was understanding that the smallest things are still super confusing to implement. So like a save system, for example, it sounds so boring and mundane, and we're so used to save systems and stuff like that nowadays, or even just like traversing between different scenes. And there's so much programming that needs to happen to just like get it to work the way you want it to work for your specific game.
Oh, it's simple. You just click and then you go to that location, or you just save and it saves the game. Like, that's just
it's super easy.
So
doors
it's like,
are also incredibly complicated.
What did you say?
Will often rail about doors.
Doors, yeah.
Doors are super, super hard.
Yeah. So it's like understanding the pipeline, I think, was an easy transition. But once I started like making my own games, especially just knowing all of the little things that need to go into it. Menus, that's the other thing that drove us nuts, is working on menus. And I feel for Chaos Theory working with all the UI elements in Aether and Iron, because that's got to be intense. But even the systems where they're dragging things into like purchase items and stuff, I just know that was brutal to make. So
there's a lot of pain involved in each of those games.
Yeah. So
yeah, the one thing I would say, like life lesson wise, that this taught me after being a producer for almost 10 years now, is I don't believe in conspiracy theories anymore. Like, I wasn't super big on them in the first place, but the amount of coordination it takes to get just like a video game project off the ground and going and done, versus the amount of coordination when you think about like a lot of things like that, the coordination, the secrecy, the communication, like all of that kind of stuff, it's impossible. I know it just can't. I'm sorry.
It's funny because I'm actually more in line with that train of thought. Like, yes, there's definitely conspiracy theories, but like the amount of chaos that happens in game development is a good example. Like, that same chaos happens everywhere, like every job, every industry. Video games, it's interesting though, because it's the kind of clashing of creative and business, and it's the merging of them to create something that's supposed to be fun, but it's also supposed to sell so that we can make more games. So you have all these clashing personality types, and you have all these different opinions that need to be balanced and weighed. So, I mean, it's amazing that anything ever gets done within the video game industry with that. But
well, there's also like just the fact that people are playing the game. You know, you go and you watch a movie and you have no effect on how the movie plays out. But with a game, there's so many things that could go wrong, so many different ways to approach stuff. I think that's what makes game dev one of the most difficult creative, if not the most difficult, like creative
Well, it's an interactive
medium.
entertainment. Yeah, medium.
Yeah. So, all right, Gary, let's hear your story.
Oh wow. Let's see. Well, I started out a long time ago. I was a manager at a tool rental company,
Awesome.
and yeah, so I'd go around delivering heavy equipment and um, yeah, basically getting excavators stuck in mud and having to change the tracks and just getting dirty. And I hated the way I felt when I came home. I was just covered in mud all the time, and I was just like, oh, okay, something's got to give here. So I thought about it, and I was like, okay, I like to draw and stuff like that. Maybe a safe career path would be graphic design. So I started getting my ducks in a row, and I actually went to school in Vancouver at a school for 2 years doing graphic design, and it was great. And to help pay for schooling, I was working as a graphic designer full time too. And yeah, halfway through, I was just like, I don't want to do this. This isn't fun.
Yeah, can you explain to our non-artists the difference? Because I think a lot of, especially like, my parents' generation, when I was first starting, they're like, oh, just go into graphic design. But as a painter, it's like, it's such a different world.
Well, even to this day, like I still have people coming up to me, oh, you're a graphic designer, right? Can you paint me this painting? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you just said I was a yeah, most people don't.
What's the difference,
Yeah, they don't know the difference, and that's fine. It's just it gets to the point where you're like, working on somebody's logo, and they're like, "Hey, my 5-year-old designed this thing. Can you make it?" And I want to put it on my business card for my multi-million-dollar company, and you're just like, "What? No." It wears down on you a little, but at least with art, like with painting and drawing and concepting and stuff, there's a certain level of trust that people put in you. I would say there's more trust put in you doing that than there is somebody who wants a business card or a logo done. So anyways, and I just really enjoyed drawing and painting robots and landscapes and all sorts of cool things. That's where I wanted to go. And I figured, okay, graphic design, I'll start there. Anyways, yeah, after I got out of school, I actually got a job right out of school at a tech company as a production artist.
Nice.
Just working on slot machines. They were converting slot machines into mobile games. So that's all I did is I would repaint these crazy, elaborate, super colorful slot machine assets and make them fit on mobile games. We set it up all in Unity and stuff like that. And that was a good starter job, I guess. But I was still hungry for more. I wanted to be a little bit more creative and stuff. And at the time I had a lot of friends working in the animation industry. Yeah, they told me I should apply at one of the big animation studios in Vancouver, Bardell. And so I did, and I got my first animation gig. I was working as a background designer on a show called Rainbow Butterfly Unicorn Kitty.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, it was a kid show, but you know what? It was super fun to work on because like they just gave you creative carte blanche to do whatever and come up with cool concepts.
Nice.
And that was like my first real taste of like, oh hey, I'm actually designing things and making things. And it was super
was it
fun.
very like simplistic kind of art style, or what did it sort of look like?
Yeah, it was very
like what you expect from a cartoon,
but they were trying to emulate kind of Ren and Stimpy at times, so you get those really cool like beauty shots where like gross pussy looking things, like that kind of stuff was super fun to paint too. Nice. It was kind of a mix of things, but it was very simple. It was a very simplistic. It was a kid show, and it only ran for one season. But the work I did on that, they invited me to go work on Rick and Morty after that.
That's awesome.
As a background artist. And when I was working on that, it was like soul crushing. Like it was boring. I was so bored.
What about it was boring?
Well, so when you're a designer, you get to make all the backgrounds and stuff like that. When
Mm-hmm.
you're a background artist, all you're doing is taking things that other people have designed and repainting it at a different angle,
I
or
see.
you're basically cleaning up other people's crappy Photoshop files.
Mm.
And it was literally that for like day in, day out. And I started going kind of kooky, and I was like, okay. Um, and then I had a friend who worked at a Chinese company called IGG. They said I should apply over there and go work in games. And I was a little bit leery because I came from a tech company doing that, and I wasn't super satisfied.
Mm.
But when I moved over there, I started out as a marketing artist, kind of like what you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as a marketing artist, I kind of weaseled my way into the concept art department,
Nice.
and then when they had a new IP coming up, I was like, "Hey, can I work on that?" And then they threw me on there, and then yeah, for like I think it was like 2 years, we developed this one mobile game, and it was just super fun because all I did was like really cool looking backgrounds, and I worked with some really awesome tech artists, and just like we had them all animated and stuff, and I learned a ton working there. But I really had to like force my way in there,
Mm.
um, and show that I could do the job. But
Yeah, so how did you get a job like that coming from more 2D sort of animation stuff? Like, did you show that in your portfolio, or did you have just a personal batch of work to show off?
my portfolio was a lot of personal stuff,
Mm.
but it was also for me like part of the reason why I jumped onto Rick and Morty
Hmm.
is because of the name recognition.
Yeah,
You say you worked on Rick and Morty, and everybody just kind of goes, "Oh, yeah, okay."
gotcha. Yeah.
And to be honest, that's partially why I got the job at IGG.
Mm.
But because I had that under my belt, I was able to show them, "Hey, I'm perfectly capable of,
Yeah.
doing some awesome concept art." Um, but yeah, it's a little bit of luck, and then a little bit of, well, mostly hard work and preparation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you definitely have to build up to something like that. Did you find it a difference in production styles between the film industry and the game industry?
oh yeah, yeah. Like working working at the animation, working in animation for me, anyways, was very. It's very strange. You work on a show, and if it does well,
Hmm.
the studio's reaction is, okay, let's do it with half the amount of people and way less money, and in a shorter time. So you
Interesting.
almost get punished for doing good work.
Huh.
That's how it felt, anyways, when I was in the animation industry. So
Do they just
um,
assume you can be more efficient or something? Or
no, it's all about money. It's all about
gotcha.
money. Like that's all this. That's what it felt like, anyways. It felt like the studios only cared about money, not necessarily
Mm.
making a cool product. It was eye-opening jumping into an animation studio. I'm one of my best friends. He's like the lead animator on Teen Titans Go,
Hmm.
but he loves it. He's been there for like as long as the show's been running, and
Hmm.
that's been a really long time. I don't know what. I think they're on their 13th, 14th season or
Wow.
something. But for some people, it's a good gig. But I don't know. For me and what I wanted to do, which was basically concept art,
Hmm.
it just didn't line up exactly. So I had to make a change, and I was lucky enough that I was living in Vancouver. There was a lot of options in Vancouver
Yeah.
and places I could go.
So, and
But
were you working in studio at all these places, or were any of them
yeah.
remote?
So
Okay.
so I was working in studio, and then while I was working at IGG, that's when COVID hit,
Mm.
and then after that, it was like I was working at home way more, and then I was like, wow, I really like this. Like on it to be, I know it sucked for a lot of people. I know COVID was really bad, but man, for me, it was like one of the best things to ever happen.
Mm.
I'm just gonna say it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like my next jobs after that they were all remote, and I was
Hmm.
able to like you're able to balance family life and work life way more when you're working remotely. Or
Yeah.
at least that's what I found, anyways. But yeah, um, yeah, and well, after IGG, I ended up getting a job at another um, another mobile company as a senior artist at a place called Navigator Games. They were working on Iron Maiden. They have a mobile game, so we
Oh,
were working
cool.
on that, and I got to like work on a couple of their like tour T-shirts for their tour
Yeah, isn't
in
that one
Canada and stuff.
behind you, right? On your wall?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
That one I actually I made them a deal. I said, hey, I'll paint this one for you, but the band has to sign it.
That is so
So
sick.
they got me a signed shirt, which is pretty dope.
Nice.
Yeah, and then we worked on this one game for like a year. It was a little bit more than a year, but Avatar. So the Nickelodeon, the Last Airbender. We had the IP for this mobile game, and it's called Avatar Generations. And we worked really hard on that game, and it was out for like a year, and then I guess Netflix came in and they pulled the IP
Licensing
from us,
stuff.
and we had to shut the game down after, which really
Oh.
sucked because everybody like put a lot of blood and sweat into that game, and yeah, we got that taken away, but that's all right though. And then I was working as a contractor for a lot of little tech companies who needed some odd concept art here and there. And then yeah, after Navigator and we lost the IP for Avatar, they laid the entire art department off, and then yeah, so I was just doing contract work until I found Seismic, and yeah, now I'm here.
Nice. That's awesome. One of the things I know artists, especially 2D artists, always ask is like, did you feel like you needed to use a lot of 3D in the jobs that you've had, or have you been able to just scathe by with painting?
Well, when I was working at IGG, I was like one of those religious nuts about you should be able to draw everything in 2D yourself. I was very, very hard. I was a little skeptical about using 3D in a lot of the art, but then like the senior concept artist, that my lead at the time, we were both we were both in that same kind of, we don't like to use 3D, but
Yeah.
we both kind of started doing some research and playing around with it, and actually there was a really nice balancing act that can happen there, and you work way faster when you use 3D to help inform some things like perspective, like plotting out perspective for a giant castle. It's
Yeah.
time consuming to do
Yeah.
it by hand and to do it properly. So 3D really did, it helps a lot, and I use it a lot now too to help inform perspective and all of that kind of stuff. In animation, you can get away with it for a little bit, but a lot of times with the camera and stuff, you have to like kind of fake it. So if you really look at some of the scene backgrounds and like animations and stuff, sometimes things are a little askew, but there's a
Gotcha.
reason for it because the camera's doing all sorts of weird movements and stuff. But
Interesting.
anyways, yeah, no, yeah, as a 2D artist, I use 3D to inform a lot of my stuff, but I do it knowing that I could do it by hand.
Yeah, if you needed to.
Yeah, you have to kind of have a basic understanding of how to do it yourself before you can actually really embrace the 3D into your work. Because I know a lot of artists that just they'll kick bash things to death and then they'll just draw over top of it without really understanding what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you can kind of tell. So anyways, that's a whole nother can of worms.
The other question I have real quick is I know a lot of artists question whether or not they should be a generalist or a specialist. And what do you feel like you are, and what do you feel helped you get these jobs?
Well, I'm kind of unfortunate. Like with game development, you kind of need to be a generalist. But I'll say this though: the thing that gets you the job, the thing that you have to be good at something. There has to be something that you like, you can actually focus on and get really good at. Like for me, I just like personally, I love doing backgrounds and props and stuff like that. Characters are not my jam. I can do them, but I'm not that great at them.
Mm.
And I mean, we've got Mika here who's like phenomenal at it. So I mean, even her on our team, on the team, like if I'm having trouble with a character, I'll go to her and say, hey, can I get your eyeballs on this?
Hmm.
Like, what's wrong with this? And she'll help me out with that. And yeah, generally you want to find something that you're really good at, that you really love to do,
Hmm.
and get really good at that. But you have to be able to do the other stuff too. So it's
You need to be highly adaptable.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm trying to think of questions for our audience because coming from the art, does anyone else have art questions? Because I feel like I wouldn't really know all the things to ask coming as, another artist. For anyone that might be wanting to get into it. If not, we
One
can...
day I'll get into it, but that as a hobby and when I have a lot more free time than I do now.
It's one of those things that you kind of have to want to do.
Mhm.
If you're the kind of person that's got free time on the weekend and your choice is, okay, I'm just gonna blow the whole weekend playing video games.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you want to get good at something, and it doesn't matter if it's art or anything, you got to put the time in.
Mhm.
So, you got to make that time, even if you don't necessarily want to at that moment. Sometimes you have to force yourself a bit. It's discipline. That's the word.
Yeah.
Discipline.
And I think the other thing I would say is even if you're watching this and like you're a student or something like that, you still need to put hours in outside of school. That was the thing that I really noticed. It was like, yeah, school can teach you fundamentals and stuff like that. There's good networking opportunities, but like you have to go out of your way to be like, this is what I want my portfolio to look like. This is what I want people to sort of know me for. This is what I want to try to excel at, and just do those things. So, and just keep a sketchbook as well. That's the other thing. Just keep drawing all the time.
Yeah, you really have to like fall in love with the process, because like a lot of people get hung up on their finished work and stuff like that, and like, oh, it's got to be a perfect picture. No, it doesn't. The thing you got to fall in love with is the actual, like, picking up the pencil and actually doing the work. What comes out of it might look great, but most artists don't like their own work, so
Yeah.
they got to move on to the next thing. So
I mean, that's just
yeah,
every creative.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Cool. All right, Gina, let's hear from you.
All right, so my origin story getting into games.
Yeah.
I started my career mostly doing real estate and property management, and that was fine. And it's a good career path. But I started playing games with my husband and some friends, and from there, started following games that I like on different forms of social media, including Reddit and Discord. And in those places, of course, they're a little more forum-esque, and you have a lot of live engagement where people are asking questions, answering questions. Also on Twitch, just watching people play games. And then maybe I'm guilty of a little backseat gaming from time to time, but was just doing that for games that I enjoy. If I saw a question on Reddit and I knew the answer, I would, be quick to offer that up. And the same on Discord. And as it happened on Discord with one of my favorite games, there was an admin in the community who was just not my cup of tea. And I found him to be, pretty crass and rude and insulting to people sometimes when they ask questions that maybe he perceived to be, rather obvious or something like that. And so I just started kind of sucking the air out of the room when it came to answering those questions. And I would just try to get there before him, answer those questions. And then throughout that process, ended up just, at a volunteer capacity, working my way up from like a moderator to a server admin and things like that within the Discord community of the game. And then here comes COVID, I think, a part of the origin story for a lot of people. But things changed for me where I was working I was doing a lot of events. The property management company I worked for dealt mostly with senior housing. So our residents were, for the most part, ages 62 plus. And, in COVID, they were definitely a high risk population. So we shut down all of our events, and that was a big part of what I was doing. So a little bit of community management on the IRL side of things transitioned into community management in a digital space. So after the company that I was, or it was System Era. The game was Astroneer. And the team there was just like, she's doing this thing for us all the time for free. Why don't we talk to her about, coming on board as the community manager in an official capacity?
Nice.
And so we kind of talked about that a little bit, and that turned into a job offer. And
Did
I've
they
been
approach
learning
you,
on the
or
job.
did they approach you, or did you say something to them?
Initially, it came up before COVID ever happened. It was kind of like, let's, is this something you might be interested in? Because, I think they might have been thinking about budgets for future years, and we are just sort of putting out some feelers. And so that had kind of fallen to the side. And then when everyone started working from home, the company, System Era was it still is in Seattle, and I am in Georgia. So they didn't have any remote workers at that time when we first chatted about it. And then after the pandemic kicked off, one of the co-founders of the company had moved from Canada to the States and was like, we're all working remotely and this is fine. Like, we're still producing our work, and I think I want to move back home. And so he moved back to Canada. And then that sort of shut that out of the water. The whole, well, we don't have any remote workers. Well, now everybody's a remote worker.
Yeah.
So that kind of blew the door open. And when we stopped doing events where I was, and I was kind of, I had nothing to do. I went to somebody on the team and was like, "Hey, we talked about this before. Has anything changed?" And it was the response was not super positive and just like, "Oh, we'll think about it," sort of thing. So I had found another job, and the day I started there, they called me back and were like, "Hey, can we get you in for
Oh,
an
no
interview?"
way.
So
Of
I
course.
worked a job for like a month and put in my notice. Well, I guess 2 weeks, put in my notice, worked another 2 weeks, and left.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, that was going in.
It's interesting how many game dev jobs. This is just anecdotally too, talking to friends. Like, everyone has such a different story, and I think a lot of it, a lot of it comes down to just, especially for the origin stories, is just like meeting people. I think a lot. Again, going back to school, and the reason I'm thinking about this is like someone was talking to me about school stuff today, and a lot of people think, oh, you just get out of school and you just start applying to jobs, and it's like that works for some people, but I'd say almost more times than not in this industry, it's about like hustling.
It's who you know.
Yeah.
It's all about who you know.
Yeah. So,
because each person that you know, like whether at an event or just being involved in like a community, opportunities are going to present themselves. And you can cold call or do resumes, applications, like that does work, especially if you have qualifications. But ultimately, qualifications will get you like a bit, but it's the adaptability, it's the integrity, it's the work ethic, and all of that comes from observations from the people around you that may come up with opportunities. So yeah, having an extensive contact list and actually building those relationships can get you quite far.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, when we get to you, Josh, I think it'll be interesting not only to hear your origin, but also what you're, because you're, partially in charge of hiring people too. It'll be interesting to hear what you're looking for. So
my origin story is like I got into the industry by sheer chance, luck. What do you call? My background, like I started work, like I was Walmart night shift freezer.
Okay.
And then ATV warehouse, then 6 years of roofing and construction.
Wow.
So when I got like for Size of Squirrel, it was maybe like 6 months after the company was founded, and I was currently going to university in Seattle. I started university a bit later, like I was 23 or 24 when I started. But I saw a job posting because I just recently moved to Seattle and I was looking for work. And I saw a job posting for, I think it was at the time producer or product manager for Size of Squirrel. And I remember telling some of my friends that were nearby, I'm just like, see, this is the job that I'll one day try to go for. But at the time, I was looking for other construction jobs because that was what I at the time.
What were you going to school for?
Business.
Okay.
But what ended up happening, they persuaded me to just apply anyway because you miss every shot you don't take. Sure, why not? There's absolutely no harm. But multiple rounds of interviews later, meeting with Jay and the other co-founder at the time, I was actually hired onto the start of it was Tributary at the time, so it was nothing in comparison to what we are working on now as far as scale, scope, the team. At the time, I was the only employee at Size of Squirrel, and it was just working on narrative, like very short stories for like a choose your own adventure style mobile app. That was what we were originally working on. So yeah, that was, I guess, my origins going into Size of Squirrel. And about a year later, 6 months or a year later, I ended up dropping out of school because I was learning more at Size of Squirrel and all the aspects of the business side and the development side than I was like university, which is what I was going for to begin with. So there were quite a few projects in the early days of Size of Squirrel that were shelved or canceled for many reasons. We worked on like Lights of Felion, which was adventure style 3D game, which was quite beautiful, and I miss the concept art. And if we could ever go back and do that, I wouldn't be disappointed. But eventually going to Aether and Iron and having quite a few roles in between. Like I've been able to see all the different departments or aspects, and I may not be an artist and may not be like a game designer, but like I have been involved quite a bit just over the several years that I've been at Size of Squirrel and just have an understanding of what goes into it from like the management side, the business side. So yeah, that's my origin story. So like Size of Squirrel is my first job in the industry. I've been here for 7 years, I believe, going on 7 years. But complete chance, random getting into it, and I would have never expected. I always thought I'd get into board games. So growing up, I was the one who was like designing board games, card games for my siblings. That's something I was very interested in doing, like after going through university. But I did not expect to get into video games, and especially not into the role that I am now.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, how did that initial interview or interviews go? Like, what were you telling them that you'd be able to do to help, you know?
So I had done some management, like in the construction side of things. Honestly, like looking back on it now, if I was the hiring manager, I probably would not have hired me. I definitely would not have hired me, just because of the lack of the resume. And I've done a lot of interviews with very talented people over years being a Size of Squirrel. Gone through a lot of applications, and it was like talking to Jay now, because like I remember after my first project, like that I was managing, it failed. Like I was so distraught at like, oh no, like this project was shelved. I actually sent Jay like basically like, hey, do you want to keep me on like the company? Because like I'm sure there are more qualified people, because like and it was more about just like with Jay, it's like the integrity and the adaptability and the commitment to seeing the company succeed is what he was investing in with me, versus like having an extensive background and resume, which I very much appreciate the active faith in doing that. But yeah, that's kind of my story.
Nice. Yeah, it's very interesting. And now that you've kind of been on this other side now, and you are kind of doing interviews and stuff like that, interviewing people to hire them, what kind of qualities are you looking for?
So it's actually it very much depends on the job, but if I was to give kind of a general, showing a high level of investment when answering questions or filling out the applications actually goes a long way. And I'm not just talking about filler words, like impactful words. So the thing is with like hiring, like for depending on the job, there can be hundreds and hundreds of apps. So that is a lot of resumes to go through, and it's very easy for everything to become a blur. If I'm just speaking honestly, because you're looking for the same role and everybody's saying similar things, and you're looking for those standout people. And I mean, there's so many times when like just going through applications where people don't even answer the questions, or they do copy paste answers to questions, or
Well,
I don't know.
What was actually kind of interesting, now that you're mentioning this, like I kind of forgot about this, but the questions that were on the application for this job were very detailed themselves. Like I want to say one of them was like, how did you get interested in video games? Or it was like something along those lines. And
It's a great way to weed out people who are not actually there to take the time to look, like actually fill out the question. Like,
yeah,
the questions that we have talk about like what's your understanding of 1930s New York? Like how did you get into video games, or what are your favorite video games? And there's many people that will just do very generic answers, and those aren't the people that are really looked into twice.
I appreciated that there were those kinds of questions, because that's what I feel like is the opportunity.
It gives you the opportunity, yes,
to tell them
also
about yourself.
Cover letters. A cover letter goes a very long way, especially if it's customized to the company that you are for. If you're doing a copy paste cover letter, like, and see, that's kind of the catch 22 of it. Like, when you're looking for a job, like, you need to apply to a lot of places in order to have the most likelihood of actually getting it. So there's a lot of work if you have to customize every single application to the company that you're applying to for. So that's a lot of work, especially if most of them are not actually going to accept it. But it does give you the highest chance of standing out amongst the potentially hundreds of other applicants that are applying. Jay told me, like, for when I applied, like, there were a bunch of other applicants at the time. And like Jay said, one of the biggest standouts that he had with me was I actually had a cover letter versus nobody else did, which was quite interesting to me, because like the way I grew up, my dad was always like this: you always do a cover letter when you apply for a job, you always customize it to the job. And I guess that actually worked out in the end. But yeah, answering detailed questions or answers to the questions goes a long ways. Like, everybody who's at this company, they answered in detail to the questions. And I believe everybody had a cover letter too. Maybe that's just like Jay thing.
Nice, that's interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of mystery behind the hiring process, especially when you're the one looking for a job. And a lot of times you're like, are they even like looking through this stuff? So I guess it's good to hear it from someone like you that people are, at least at some companies, actually reviewing these things. And it is
they do get reviewed, and I mean, like, Cody was the latest one to be reviewing applicants with the QA. But there's, like, with a small company like Size of Squirrel, and I'm sure many other companies, like, we don't have a dedicated hiring team of people. Like, there's usually an individual or a few individuals that, after the first pass, like, it's passed on to some others for feedback. But there's a lot of applicants to go through, and it takes a lot of time to go through it and give each application justice. Like, unless you want to spend 10 seconds going through somebody's like hard work to actually put an application in, like, it does take a lot of time. And that means we are slower to respond, slower to get back. And oftentimes it's impossible to get to every single one. and actually give a response, like
Mhm.
saying sorry you weren't accepted, or you were accepted. Like all of that takes time, it takes effort, as well as whoever's the designated hiring person, they're juggling a bunch of other tasks at the same time, because as an indie studio, you're wearing multiple hats. So it's an addition, like, we need this role filled, we need you to do this, but also there's this other stuff that needs to be done at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I can speak to like the QA role. Like we had about 1,000 applicants, give or take, roughly. And to manually go through 1,000 applicants takes a while. Like even at my fastest, when I would like dedicate chunks of my day, go through them at most. And I'm a pretty quick reader. At most, you could get through 2-ish applicants a minute, kind of, if everything is going right, or like 1 applicant a minute approximately. That's giving them time to like read through the resume, figure out if you want to put them into the bucket of I want to contact them, or like maybe this is my short list, or the hey, if nothing else works out, this is my other list to draw from, and then kind of the thank you for applying, but not this time kind of list. Then crafting the response, like you were saying, like it's a very time consuming process, and yeah, just especially when you got over 1,000 people applying for it. It's also like going to pick a puppy or a cat at like the SPCA or a breeder or whatever.
I want all of them.
Through. I always want to hire, like I've been in your shoes. I just want to hire all of you and give you all jobs to make you all happy. But that's not the reality. At the end of the day, you have to pick either 1, 2, 3, or however many people you're hiring for. You got a certain amount of roles you have to fit, and there can be, out of that 1,000 candidates, there's probably arguably close to 800 fully qualified people that could have done the job, and I have to pick 1 or 2 from that batch. It's a very, very tough thing, and it's when you're doing it manually, it just makes it even that much harder.
Yeah, and honestly, we could probably do a whole video on just hiring application interviews, like, because doing interviews, especially like in person versus like remote, like the big difference. And yeah, there's a lot there. Because I mean, the like one interesting thing that I've noticed, kind of just a side thing, is like doing remote interviews, like you don't catch all the signs and signals and behavior that you would in person, like that you just kind of pick up passively, like you're just looking at a screen of somebody else. So the way you go about presenting yourself and the way you get interviewed, like it's just very different than in person.
Yeah.
It's hard to match body language in a remote interview and like read it, because you can see like their bust basically, but you can't see anything like how they're like necessarily positioned in a chair unless they're like really expressive or like they've got a really far away shot, for example. But like, yeah, it's a different experience. That's for sure.
It's interesting.
In some ways, it's almost harder to put on. Like, I remember interviewing in person. It almost feels like a show, right? Like it's like a showcase. Like you're presenting yourself and you're putting on not necessarily an act, but like the best version of yourself, like in person. You're dressing up, potentially more than you would normally. You're composing yourself. You're really like actively thinking
for in-person. For in-person interviews.
Yeah. Like you're just actively thinking about like the best version of yourself to present and maybe masking off some of the less desirable parts. In a remote interview, you almost sometimes get a truer version of the person because they don't have to worry about that as much. Like I have to worry about from like the chest up. Right? So like you almost can sometimes eke a little bit more of a person's actual personality out doing remote because it is a little bit more casual. And that can show you some different kind of flags, whether they be green or red or what have you. It's almost like the way that I view it is like you are almost getting them at like that quasi-employed stage versus like the more formal stage of like an in-person interview. They're just very different experiences with their pros and their cons.
That's interesting.
I mean, yeah, ultimately for me, like doing interviews, like a lot of the assessment is from the applications themselves, and then yes, like maybe the 1, 2, possibly 3 calls where we do interviews. But there's only so much you can gather from somebody, and the rest is trust that they're actually going to pull it off based on their previous job experience, based on their references, and then hoping it goes well with actual work for the next few weeks or months. But yeah, interviews and applying quite interesting.
Did all
Nice.
of you fully dress for your interview with the company if you did it remotely, or were you pajama
Mine was in
pants?
person, and I definitely I went out. I bought clothes before going to the interview. So yes, absolutely.
I wore like a
I
button
kind of
down. Yeah.
I kind of grew up like with all the job. I've had a lot of jobs before I
Mhm.
got into this career, but like I grew up with uh, same thing. Like my dad told me, you got to write a good cover letter. I would show up to interviews in a shirt and tie
Mm.
Yep.
if it was appropriate. Like I wanted the full 90 hours. But as soon as I got into the industry, like it was
T-shirts.
like portfolio, and then I was just like, I just showed up like I would show up when I would go to work. So I'd
Mm.
be in like, I wouldn't be dressed like a slob, but I wouldn't. It wasn't so formal anymore, and
Hmm.
it's just kind of, hey, this is the
Oh,
work I can do. And
for
for
doing interviews
Gary
and for
shows up.
people
He's like,
who are
I know
in
my
the
art is
interviews.
good. It's fine. Don't
Yep.
worry about it.
no. Well, no, to be honest, like it got to a point, like I noticed anyways, is as I got older and like, the people interviewing me were getting younger and younger,
Mm.
it made them more uncomfortable if I showed up in a shirt and tie.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of like I had to
You
like
being
dial it
relaxed
back
is
a
just
bit.
confidence in your ability.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
Yeah, this kind of will segue into a question that I want to talk about a little bit, kind of based off of this, or this is segueing into something I want to ask. But yeah, for me, I think for all of my remote interviews, I'll at least just put on like a buttoned-up shirt, generally speaking. No tie, but just like a very casual buttoned-up shirt that I would normally wear out for like anything else. So like I've got like a handful of just like casual button-ups that I'll wear periodically.
Corporate
But
casual.
I'm the monster who works remotely, but like I have to get like fully dressed, like pants, shirt. I gotta as if I'm going into the office. Like if I need to get pulled out to go to the office at any point in time, like I'm ready to go. It's just like work mode for me. If I'm in like my pajamas or even like just half dressed, it's a completely different vibe for me. And I'm just not as necessarily like invested in my work for that day if that's the case. I definitely feel like I'm like cutting corners. But kind of this like in-person interview talk. Has anyone ever had like a wild in-person interview sequence or like how it was structured that just like completely threw you off guard and you really didn't know how to like respond to that?
Oh, man.
So like for me, my first interview, I was interviewing for a promotion at BioWare for a test coordinator, which is a role I had already been doing, but they had when you're a contractor, you fight for these roles as they pop up, basically like these permanent full-time roles. And I had one where it was like the final stage of this interview. They brought us into like the second floor boardroom, which was like the super fancy one reserved for like the EA execs when they pop in. And I called it like the Council of 14. There was basically 14 people around this big oval table, like corner to corner, like edge to edge, basically, and then me in the middle with all 14 of them simultaneously interviewing me. And this is after I've already gone through like 6 other steps of this interview process to get this job.
Wow.
And 4 hours was that interview in person. And like most people already know me. I've been working with them for forever. But then like, I remember they got sidetracked and distracted on their own. They got like Final Fantasy 13 had just come out and they started arguing amongst themselves about whether or not Final Fantasy 13 was a bad or an atrocious game. So it's just a very interesting kind of process to go through. So I was just curious if anyone else has ever had anything like that.
That's actually a good sign though. If they're comfortable enough to start up casual conversation like that, I don't know, that would say to me that they've kind of already made up their mind about you.
I didn't get the job, unfortunately, so no.
Oh. Maybe you said something bad about Final Fantasy 13.
No, what ended up happening with that one was because the way that their contract system works is basically you can be employed for a year at a time, and then you have to take a forced 3-month break to reset the contract. We called it the BioWare vacation. And you have one other year under that contract before you can never be hired again as a contractor. It's because of a Californian labor law that EA has to follow. And basically at that point in time, I was like halfway through, maybe 3/4 of the way through my first year contract. and I had made it to the final 2. And then the other guy they ended up going with was at the very end of his second year contract. So they're like, oh, yeah, we can totally put you off for now. We'll hire this guy that we also want to keep. And then we'll get you in like a year or so, and we'll bring you on full time. But that did not help me at that point in time because I wanted a real job, not a contractor job, because it came with like all the benefits and higher pay and blah, 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 blah. So that kind of like bummed me out. And then like all the other like subsequent ones, like the pruning process of like the interviews in person are just like just really crazy. I remember we had to do for that position, we had to do an in-person test where they like stuck us in a theater and we had to watch clips of Mass Effect 2's DLC that was in development. And we had to call out bugs as we saw them. And then basically once you hit like a quota of unique bugs that no one else had filed yet, you were checkmarked and you got to move on to the next step.
Wow.
Everyone else would like
intense.
fail and then have to like stay on until basically they ran out of bugs. Then you got a take-home exam to play through all of the original BioShock, and then you had to write basically a thesis paper on BioShock. And
Jeez.
that ended up being like a 20-page essay on like answering several questions they had you answer in a long-form question about BioShock. So I had to play through BioShock, and we had a weekend to do that. So I had to buy BioShock, play through it as fast as I could, then write this 20-page essay. Then I had another interview, and then finally the Council of 14.
That's insane.
It was like the process for like hiring just a QA person there was like for a full-time role was just absolutely
rigorous.
insane.
Yikes.
To get in the door was a phone interview, and then the website thing I talked about earlier. But then also during that phone interview, I got into an argument with my boss, my would-be boss, about whether Infamous or Prototype was better. What game are you playing right now? And I was like,
Prototype is better.
The answer is Infamous, and I'll fight you.
No.
I had done testing for Prototype as like a focus tester, but yeah, I was playing Infamous at the time, and I was arguing for the pro Infamous side. But that was a really fun argument. Like that was a fun process. And like I look back at the rigorous test coordinator interview process, as like insane as it was fun, but it was insane and stressful. Yeah, I was wondering if anyone else had anything else like that ever.
Definitely not at that level.
When I got the job at IGG, the interview process was kind of weird because like the whole company is basically Chinese, so they're all Mandarin speaking. English is their second language. The second interview, we went out for lunch, and I said, "Yeah, you guys pick a place, we'll go." And they went to this Chinese restaurant, like authentic Chinese. Everything, the menus are all in Mandarin. Everyone in there is speaking Mandarin. The like when I walked in, I kind of got the weird like, this is gonna be a mess. And yeah, I had to pick something off of the menu, and I was like asking them questions about it, but I was like, I wanted to kind of look cool or whatever. So I was like, you know what? I'll just pick a couple of things, and whatever it is, I'll have at it. Yeah. So I got this thing of chicken feet.
Of course.
Yeah, and then a little side of rice. Apparently that's what I ordered.
Did you eat it all?
Oh yeah, I had to. I was in the second interview.
That was the true test.
But well, later I found out, because it was like a kind of a 2-3 interview process. I found out that there was a much better artist that applied, and they wanted to hire him, but his
he didn't
Photoshop,
eat the chicken feet.
No, well, actually, I found out what it came down to is we each got a test, right? Like, hey, paint this and do it in this amount of time, and I did all of that, and they said that the only reason I got hired over this other way better artist was my Photoshop file was so organized.
Oh, interesting.
That was the thing that got me the job, not necessarily my skill. I had enough skill.
It's a combination.
Yeah, but yeah, it was. But yeah, and it was. I like to think it was because I ate the chicken feet, but we'll see.
So you don't name your things Gia edit V1, Gia edit V1.2.3.
final
Gina, stop calling
underscore
out my
four.
Photoshop projects that I do on my
Right?
own.
Yeah. Yes. We won't open my my file explorer today.
That's funny. Yeah, honestly, so if I can briefly go through my origin story, I've done a lot of contract work since I graduated college in like 2013. I was trying to go more into fantasy illustration, and I started with doing Fantasy Flight cards, like the Lord of the Rings trading card game and the Game of Thrones trading card game. That was like some of my earliest. That was like my big break kind of thing. And I got those jobs mostly by going to conventions and meeting lots of like Magic the Gathering artists and art directors and just like the networking and showing my portfolio over and over so they knew who I was. By the time I applied for real, they were like, "Oh yeah, your stuff is good enough to actually do the work."
I mean, networking is tedious and very intense, but it does pay off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think honestly that's been one of the biggest like boons to my career in general is just like meeting people and like knowing cool people in the industry, and lots of cool people know other cool people in the industry too, which is nice. And yeah, from there I was hopping around to like different very very small companies, and at one point I was working on a couple gigs that equaled full-time work at the same time, and they all fell through at the same time. And at that point, I was kind of like, okay, well, if I'm trying to work on games that are falling through not by my own doing, why don't I just try to make a video game myself and see how that goes?
So that's why you did your own thing.
Yes. So I went on YouTube and I typed in how to make a video game. I did a bunch of tutorials and I just kept learning.
Did you know like Unity going
Nope.
into?
Nope.
Okay.
In college, I did a very, very basic like game design course. We like made some little like Flash game kind of things, but that was like my only experience to programming. And then
So did you go into it solo, or did you go with like a friend, or?
Yeah, so one of my best friends from childhood, he went to school for programming. So I partnered with him to make my game, and he didn't know Unity either, though. He wasn't like a game programmer. He was more just like a general programmer, and so we kind of learned everything together, which was really fun. But through that is, going back to our discussion from earlier, where I learned like all of the ins and outs of like every single thing that needs to go into making a game, like, working with a team and, all of the art assets, all of the music assets, voiceover, trying to find, a publisher or someone to help like get the game out the door, the whole shipping and marketing process, even the development stuff is just, it's nuts. Like there's so many things that can happen throughout development, and having a super small team. Yeah. What's up?
With you, that's definitely what made you stand out and why you're with us, because having that holistic knowledge of video game development definitely sets you apart. And just in general, if anybody's wanting to get into video games, having a holistic understanding of how video games are made outside of your own department goes a long way with just understanding where your job fits in.
Mm-hmm.
And like you starting from nothing and learning about it is like a great example of taking it upon yourself to learn that, which is quite commendable.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was just one of those things. I always knew I wanted to get into this industry, and it just gets to this point where you're like, well, I should just do it, right? And then through that experience, you meet other people, you get other types of opportunities, and that's how I eventually, like you were saying, kind of ended up here. Is just it's this industry is very much about putting yourself out there as well as doing the work to back up what you can do. And I think a lot of people like sometimes are missing one thing or the other. Like they could be like an insanely good artist, but they don't have the best people skills, or they have really great people skills, but they don't take the time to build up their skill level to be able to actually get the work. So I think for people that are feeling kind of stuck right now, because I briefly saw in the chat like someone's talking about how hard it is to get work in this industry, and it definitely is. But the one thing I will also say is there's always people doing projects, and there's always a project to hop on. It's just a matter of like looking outside of, just the general. I don't even know what you call it, but like, for example, like there's indie Facebook groups. People are posting stuff in there all the time. There's Discord groups. There's websites. There's LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn in this industry is a very underutilized resource for looking for work and networking with people as well. Because as an artist, you're kind of like, it's like really like professional and buttoned up kind of thing. But I've met a lot of cool people just by linking in with them as well. So
there's also a lot of like community discords for like specific departments of work. So like I'm part of a few game production ones, and like they'll do things like job boards, but they'll have like postings that'll feed in from all of the different websites like Grackle or remote game jobs or indie game dev, stuff like that. Join those, get to know your peers. I know a few people in that production Discord who ended up hiring each other because they got to know each other, and it was basically like having a year-long interview for that whole process. So like those are super, super helpful. Like Nick said, LinkedIn is also super helpful. It's not, as long as you start to like tailor your follower or like who you're following and then like your feeds to like be more in your lane. It can be super, super helpful. I lived a lot of my life in the past 2024 and 2025 on LinkedIn and these Discord groups, just like A, networking, and B, job hunting was kind of like the side thing, because like if you network good and you get to know people, you don't even have to like be friends with them. You have to treat them like they are. They're your network. They're your potential future employers or partners or what have you. It can go a really, really long way. Like you don't. I wasn't talking to you, Google. Thanks. Yeah, that can be super, super helpful. Wow, that just derailed me completely. The other thing I was going to say, game jams and stuff like that. Check your city and check your state or your province. A lot of the times, there'll be local game dev scenes that are just kind of tucked away in a little corner, and they're doing their thing. Oftentimes, they pop up at like universities and schools, but usually will also involve people from around your city and your community. So check those out. Like I know in Canada here, like where I live in Edmonton, there's a few Edmonton-based ones, and there's a few Calgary-based ones, and then they kind of combine sometimes to do kind of province-wide stuff, usually in the summer.
In the United States, most cities have what's called IGDA. It's the International Game Developer Association, and I've met people through that as well. And, game jams are just like people to like partner with to work on cool projects. It's then they're just like open. You just show up and you kind of hang out and talk. Yeah, there's workshops too. That's the other cool thing.
I was also going to mention the IGDA. They also have a Discord group, and I think you can just Google IGDA Discord and get there for job boards and kind of like Cody was saying, all of the different. If you follow a YouTuber or a blog that's industry related, they probably have a Discord, and that Discord probably has a jobs board. So don't miss on those. You're definitely already on Discord if you're in this channel. So
yeah.
And the other big piece of advice I would give to anyone is like, don't take the rejection personally if you can. I know it's a really hard thing to do, and it's easier said than done. But the industry, the way that it is right now, is it's very much an employer's market, which means that there's more employees or job seekers than there are positions out there. So it's like you basically have the ability to, like I said, we had 1,000 applicants for the QA role. You got your pick of the cream of the crop, and it's not that you weren't qualified for the job or you didn't deserve it as much as anyone else. It's sometimes it can be just the order that you looked at. We looked at applications. It could be we're not looking at remote, or there was someone who was local that made it a little bit would make coordination a little bit easier if possible, even in a remote role. There could be any number of factors that could prevent you from being the one who got picked out of the literal pile of people trying to get this job as well too. So you have to really try and disconnect yourself and who you are and your own personal worth from the application process as much as you can. Otherwise, it'll just beat you down. And having gone through that recently, where like, wow, I've got I've got 15, 16, 18 years of experience. I'll handle this layoff like no one's business. Everyone out there is like, it's really hard for everyone, even with a lot of experience right now. So one of the fastest lessons that I learned was, trying to disconnect myself as much as possible. And even I wasn't always super successful at that. I mean, there was times where I got a rejection and like it hit me like a punch in the face. And when those happen, let it happen, process those emotions, and try your best to kind of get through that and talk to the people you need to, seek out the help you need to if you need it, and then move on to the next opportunity.
Nice. Cool. All right. Well, I think we actually went kind of long on this one. This was a fun discussion to wrap up the year. Does anyone have anything else they want to mention before we close out?
Just realized that it is New Year's tomorrow. The last day of 2025.
Yep.
What a year.
I know. Well, everyone can look forward to playing Aether Iron, hopefully relatively soon. So just keep an eye out for release dates and stuff like that. And we will have some cool news in the coming months with our game. And we're going to be doing these continuously each week as well. So just keep an eye out for next time slot for this. Thanks for everyone that joined us, and thank you guys for hopping on with me and talking, and we will just see you guys next time.
If you want to catch one of these calls live, jump in our Discord. The link is down in the description below. And I'm really happy to say that by the time you're watching this, our game is releasing this year. So wishlist it and check out our demo. Leave us a review if you haven't already. That's super helpful to us. And any indie game dev, go out there, wishlist games, review them. It means a lot. So
please review them. I read all of them.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
All right. Happy New Year.